It's your host, Miss Shari, with the amazing Bronte. Bronte is a violinist who has recently released an incredible album titled Mr. Gomez. So, Bronte, how did you begin playing the violin?
So basically, I started asking my mom if I could play violin since the age of 4. And she actually was kind of like, oh, that's kind of too young. Like, you know, what's a 4-year-old going to do with a violin? My mom actually plays the flute, so she knew how hard music is. And she tried violin herself when she was young, and that didn't work out. So, yeah, so basically, I kept asking again and again and again until I was 7. And then my mom finally gave in and she got me a teacher and she got me a violin. And yeah, I started when I was 7, but I asked all the way through from 4 years old till 7 years old. I honestly don't know what sparked my interest. My mom thinks that I saw something on PBS and liked it.
That's fascinating. That was my next question. What inspired you to want to play the violin as your mum plays the flute? But that's incredible. And
Yeah.
what music did you grow up listening to?
So I actually grew up listening to a lot of Queen and the Beatles and who else? Popular early 2000s music. So like music that was around when, that was popular when I was little, like Katy Perry, Lady Gaga. I really love that stuff. But I listened to the Beatles quite a lot. I listened to Queen because Queen was my mom's favorite band. So yeah. But I didn't actually start listening to classical music until I started playing violin. So my mom got me like some CDs, like one CD is of Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and there was another one of like very like I remember it being very virtuosic kind of like pieces for violin. And I used to just kind of sit next to my little CD player and just put it on and just listen to it. And that's just kind of it. I would just kind of do that because I was interested. I was like, oh, I'm playing this instrument now. What does it do? Like trying to get into it. So I just sit around on loop listening to these two CDs quite often.
Wow. And who did you admire musically at that time period? And has that changed today?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because I'm not sure if there was anyone who I'd say particularly inspired me at a young age. I would say probably my teachers. My first teacher was really, really good. He was a Russian Armenian violinist, and he was the sweetest person, and he taught mostly beginners and intermediate level playing. And he just was such a nice teacher. He created a really positive environment, but he also pushed me in a really good way. And I think he was inspiring to me. But as I got older, I would kind of have phases where I'd really like certain violinists playing, and then it would change, and I'd like another violinist playing. But for a long time, I really loved Julia Fisher's playing. I still love her playing; she's flawless. But now I find it to be a bit too traditional for my taste. And I really like this Serbian violinist. Oh, I'm gonna butcher his name. Nemanja I really can't pronounce it, like Radulovic, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And what I love about him is he is just so versatile. He incorporates a lot of traditional kind of like folky Serbian music fused with classical music. And he has a really good album called oh what's it called? It's basically all Eastern European, and he has a lot of Khachaturian and pieces by various composers that would normally not be played, I think, as much or get that much attention. And I think he has a really good energy. He adds a little bit of like oomph to things. Like he's very dramatic, and I just like how free he is, and it is quite inspiring when I listen to him play and see what he does because he's definitely going against um the norm in a lot of ways.
It's really interesting that you touched on that because I remember we met at the networking event in London and you really spoke about the traditionalist views of that genre and they are not really open to change. Is that,
Yeah.
did that influence your decision to study in the UK?
I think I don't think I really thought of it that much back then. Um, so let me think about, I guess I started school about 4 years ago. I think back then I was a little more sucked into the classical world, and only very recently, since graduating, have I found that I can go other paths and that it's still, I don't know, legitimate in a way. I feel like classical people can sometimes become a bit snobbish and think that that's, it's a higher form of music or something like that. But actually, I think the fact that most classical musicians can't improvise very well, and are too scared to, and the fact that we can only play with a piece of paper in front of us telling us what to do is not a very good representation of skill set. Like, we can kind of only do things if we have all the instructions there. Whereas in other forms of music like jazz or even just rock and roll or whatever, people often play by ear. Maybe they don't even know how to read music, but I think true musicianship is being able to actually play your instrument without being fed all this information and being spoon-fed.
I agree. Let you agree there. So on that note, do you prefer contemporary or classical?
I definitely prefer contemporary music.
Yeah.
Um, Especially since studying at the RCM, I got really good opportunities to play in some contemporary concerts. So we have a concert kind of series called New Perspectives, which is where we play much more contemporary pieces than we normally would. And a lot of times we get to play student compositions from other students at the school. And that's always been really, really fun. It's extremely challenging and really stressful, but I swear by the end of that, I feel much more fulfilled, accomplished, and like I've learned a lot versus playing in a symphony orchestra project where we're doing like Mozart or something.
Yeah. And what is your favorite violin piece to play, if you have a favorite?
Yeah, that's a toughie. At my, you know what, at my last recital, my graduation recital at the Royal College of Music, I played a piece by Block called the Balshem Suite.
Yeah.
And it's 3 movements long, and it's just a really fun piece to play. It's kind of virtuosic. It's very special to me. And I find that when I play that on stage, I'm able to like let loose a lot, and that something about that music just really speaks to me, and I'm able to fully express myself in a way that I not always, I don't know, not always able to do, depending on, how much I can connect to the piece. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy playing that one, the Balshem Suite by Block.
Hmm. And how has your experience been so far morphing into a more contemporary space?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How has your experience been so far morphing into a more contemporary space as a violinist? As you said, it's quite
Oh, okay.
rigid and structured. So how have you found the whole experience?
Um, I'm not sure. I'd say I'm still kind of on a journey with everything. Uh, I'm looking to start a band actually. And what I want to do, my goals are to incorporate the things I love about 20th century music, which would be more contemporary music. So that's uh, some composers would be Benjamin Britten and Shostakovich and Prokofiev and Stravinsky and composers like Bloch as well. Um, I want to take elements of 20th century music and modernize it even more in a different kind of, in a different genre, taking inspiration from what I love from like composers like Shostakovich and putting it in a rock band and adding synths to it and um reinventing it in a way, not ripping them off, not copying their melodies or anything like that or what they do, but stylistically kind of incorporating that feeling because it works very well. Transitioning that into a more like contemporary or modern setting, if this makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I feel like the world right now, um, I think people appreciate film music, I love film music. That's a big part of my life as well. Wanting to be a film composer, and I love playing in sessions for film scores and everything like that. But the world, you know, people say classical music is dying, but I think the real problem is classical musicians aren't willing to move forward. And I think part of moving forward would be to do, in my eyes, doing something like what I want to do, which is, we can still hold on to some things about classical music, because honestly, classical music is the basis for so much that we have right now, jazz or even pop, just everything stems from classical music or traditional music. And I just think that if we can hold on to things, but we have to modernize it. And something that the classical world is a bit stuck on is experimental methods that were used a lot in like the 1950s and 60s. And it hasn't really progressed much since then. Now, this may sound really controversial to some people, but like, to be honest, a lot of people at my school felt this way, that they had to please their teachers by writing in a particular style, even if it's not what they wanted to do, because they needed to get a good grade.
Mm,
You know, it's not very encouraging to do something new. They say they want something new, but really they want you to do something that's been done before.
right. Yeah.
So it's a tricky one. And that's what I want to be able to do, is bring actually like classical elements to the forefront, but with modern music that I know people will actually enjoy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my mission. I mean, I'm hoping that my generation can actually be a stepping stone for classical music to move in a direction where people will, you know, listen to it outside of, a concert hall, or outside of being a classical musician yourself, or being someone who is older and grew up with it. I think there is a classical music for a younger generation, and I think we need to find what that is by actually seeing what the audiences want, rather than um, doing covers and arrangements for a string orchestra of a pop song and saying, "Oh, we're making this, uh, we're making it modern or whatever, just because we're taking I don't know, maybe a Katy Perry song and putting it with a classical ensemble." That to me is not going to make any progress.
Absolutely agree with that. And I feel as though your new album beautifully demonstrates your vision of fusing classical and contemporary music. What brought
Yeah.
about this album?
Basically, I love Halloween,
Mhm.
and I honestly just had an epiphany one day where I was just like, like I'm out of school. I feel like I want to write music. I felt like I was in a really good place to do something a little more like experimental, explore some things more now that I finally have this freedom. And I literally just walked downstairs, opened the door. My boyfriend was practicing piano, and I was just like, "Hey, do you want to write a Halloween album?" He's like, "Sure." And then we just did it.
Wow.
And we spent about 2 months on it, start to finish, and it was a big learning curve. And I actually was not familiar with any of the software that I used for the album. So it was a big learning curve, but I'm really, really happy that we did it, because it's kind of been the start of me figuring out what I really, really want to do and what direction I want to go in. And it's really sparked the idea of me now wanting to pursue finding members to create some sort of band or ensemble that playing original music. Because I do know some bands and stuff do covers of some classical things, or they reference things, but I want real original music. That's one of the biggest things that I dislike when I see maybe, I don't know, guitar. Like I enjoy videos of guitarists playing arrangements of classical pieces. I think it sounds fantastic. I love it when I see violinists again uh playing covers of rock pieces on violin. But I think we have to get past covers and actually write original material to take it a step further.
Great advice. And for our fellow creators, what advice can you give them to someone who may be thinking about playing the violin or who is looking to get established in the music industry?
So my advice would be, um, do it for the right reasons, because there's a lot of people out there that either get pressured from their parents or maybe they just took it up at school and it might not actually be something they enjoy that much. And I think if you don't enjoy it, um, you either have to try to figure out how you'd enjoy it, because maybe if you don't want to quit, I think it's always good to, maybe before deciding to quit, you should always just try a little, extra push to see if there's something that you can get out of it that will make it more enjoyable, and then, go full steam with that idea. Um, but yeah, but I think, sorry, I'm getting a bit lost in my thought process here.
Okay.
But I think people, you have to find what you really like, and it may be like a really long journey to find that. Like I always thought I'd just be playing classical music, and I realized that doesn't give me any fulfillment just doing that for the rest of my life. I need to do other creative things with it, and do composition as well. I would say don't conform to what people want. I know I struggled a lot with having my interpretation of a piece and then being constantly told that I was playing it wrong. And it becomes really hurtful because it's a really personal thing. Not only is it hurtful, though, it kind of messed with my mind in thinking that I was doing things wrong, even though I was actually just doing things differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's there's a big difference there. A lot of people say, oh, no, you're not, that's wrong. That's not in the music. You're not doing that right. Well, who's to say that's not really in the music? You know what I mean? It's all a matter of interpretation. Always let yourself have freedom of interpretation. I noticed that that allows me to play so much better than being tied down to whatever's on the score, which is one of the reasons why I want to explore more uh, improvisation and playing different styles of music. But I would say, honestly, I'd encourage people to not do grade levels. I tried doing some of those back home when I was little, for like the first 2 or 3 years, and I hated it and I stopped. I think learning music theory is really, really important, but I don't believe you should ever be graded on your playing or on your musical interpretations of things. It really kills the love for it, and I just don't think it's necessary. Turning an art form into an academic subject, I think, just goes against the purpose of it. So I'd encourage, honestly, if anybody wants to take up learning violin, don't get ahead of yourself and go through the grade levels, or, I'd even say wait quite a while until you compete. I think competing can be really great, but I think it can also be really destructive because you have to do it for the right reasons. Always compete for the experience and for the enjoyment of it. Don't compete to get first place, because that will just be absolutely brutal. I've heard of people taking beta blockers before going on stage to compete. It's that bad.
Wow.
So
That's insane.
yeah, I would say it just sucked into this world of perfection, and I think it holds everyone back.
Definitely. Wow, thank you so much for sharing your insights today, Bronte. And lastly, what can we expect from you in the future?
Uh, I think right now you can expect that I'm going to be experimenting a lot. Um, I'm really gearing towards learning more about electronic music and writing for film, and yeah, just some things I mentioned earlier, starting a band. I'm not quite sure how everything's going to turn out, but what you can expect from me is I'm definitely going to try to go in a different direction away from classical music, at least for right now. I'll still, of course, play classical music when I get asked to, but in terms of my own personal projects, I am looking to move away from it. So yeah, I mean that's and more albums to come as well. I do have an idea of doing another album in the near future of uh, solo violin pieces with electronics, and possibly a duet with my friend as well, who's also a violinist. So more albums. I mean, I would really like to put out at least one a year. I'm just gonna keep writing and seeing where it gets me.
I so look forward to your future creative work. Thank you so much, Bronte, for being here
Mhm.
today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. You're welcome.